Here, a controversial and thought-provoking documentary from filmmaker Martin Durkin questioning the view that humans are changing the climate.
We are told that the Earth's climate is changing. But the Earth's climate is always changing. The climate has always changed, and changed without any help from us humans. We can trace the present warming trend back at least 200 years, to the end of a very cold period in Earth's history. This cold spell is known to climatologists as the Little Ice Age.
And there were wonderful ice fairs held on the Thames, skating and people actually selling things on the ice.
If we look back further in time, before the Little Ice Age, we find a balmy golden era, when temperatures were higher than they are today, a time known to climatologists as the medieval warm period.
We have this view today that warming is going to have apocalyptic outcomes. In fact, wherever you describe this warm period, it appears to be associated with riches.
We're having a heat wave.
In Europe, this was the great age of the cathedral builders, a time when, according to Chaucer, vineyards flourished even in the north of England. Going back in time further still, before the medieval warm period, we find more warm spells, including a very prolonged period during the Bronze Age, known to geologists as the Holocene Maximum, when temperatures were significantly higher than they are now for more than 3 millennia.
If we go back 8,000 years in the Holocene period, our current interglacial, it was much warmer than it is today. Now the polar bears obviously survived that period. They're with us today. They are very adaptable, and these warm periods in the past, what we call hypsithermals, pose no problem for them.
Climate variation in the past is clearly natural. So why do we think it's any different today? According to the theory of man-made global warming, industrial growth should cause the temperature to rise. But does it?
Anyone who goes around and says that carbon dioxide is responsible for most of the warming of the 20th century hasn't looked at the basic numbers.
So how does the industrial story compare with the temperature record? Since the mid-19th century, the Earth's temperature has risen by just over ½ degree Celsius. But this warming began long before cars and planes were even invented. What's more, most of the rise in temperature occurred before 1940, during a period when industrial production was relatively insignificant. After the Second World War, during the post-war economic boom, temperatures, in theory, should have shot up. But they didn't. They fell. Not for 1 or 2 years, but for 4 decades. In fact, paradoxically, it wasn't until the world economic recession in the 1970s that they stopped falling.
CO2 began to increase exponentially in about 1940, but the temperature actually began to decrease 1940, continued till about 1975. So this is the opposite relation. When the CO2 is increasing rapidly, but yet the temperature is decreasing, then we cannot say that CO2 and the temperature go together.
Temperature went up significantly up to 1940 when human production of CO2 was relatively low. And then in the post-war years, when industry and the whole economies of the world really got going, and human production of CO2 just soared, the global temperature was going down. In other words, the facts didn't fit the theory.